Chapter 2. One lone man stood on the pier, looking out over a dark ocean of deep sea green and blue. A hurricane off the coast began making its presence known on land as the swells on the water started building, slowly at first, then with greater and greater frequency. Black storm clouds almost obscured the sun across the western horizon, casting a wicked, foreboding haze over everything. A slight breeze tossed the seagulls around like pieces of paper in the wind. Ripples played across the growing swells. The solitary observer stood about 6 feet 6 inches of solid body mass. Medium brown hair, tainted with a slight frost, was cut short. Sunglasses hid his eyes, even though it was dark. His jaw was set, determined. He didn't smile as he withstood the building wind, facing the angering sea. With a feeling of anticipation, he committed the scene to memory, intending to capture the kinetic energy around him in his next oil painting. Another sound gradually overpowered the cry of the gulls and the roar of the waves, that of an outboard engine. A moment later an expensive speedboat pulled up in front of the pier. In it rode 3 men. One had on a tweed suit, white shirt and tie, and expensive Italian shoes. His dark black hair contrasted with the silver hoop earring in his right nostril. This man climbed out of the boat. "It looks like you're leaving us after all, your lordship," stated the newcomer, his heavy sarcasm hindered by a thick Irish accent. There was no response, even when the 2 bodyguards in the speedboat took the time to join their boss on the pier. The tall Anglo man never looked directly at the slightly shorter man, but instead preferred to gaze out over him at the horizon. It was darkening quickly, and, as choppy as the water had grown, navigating the boat back to its origin was going to be a suicidal prospect at best. At last he spoke. "Your ability to overstate the obvious annoys me, Brennan. I've been planning to leave for a few days now." The dragon's voice was almost a bass, and his New York accent clashed strongly with Brennan's. "But why?" Brennan demanded. "Business is grand. You're selling more ruddy dragon fire than ever before. Why would you want to leave?" The dragon turned his head to survey the horizon to his right. The sun had tried to win the battle with the clouds, but succeeded only in creating a breath-catching sunset. Sea swells swallowed the huge golden orb, and the clouds chose to smother it in from above. The dragon found the sight oddly poetic, especially given what was coming. "I am not pleased with the way you handle your accounts or distribute my product. It looks like I'll have to find someone else to do it for me." His hard voice shattered the picturesque view, even for himself. Brennan hesitated a moment, then laughed out loud. "You're full of it. I run your European business better than anybody. Who else could distribute your ruddy dragon fire like I do? No one." The dragon calmly withstood the insulting laugh in silence. "My associates seem to think otherwise." Brennan spat out a curse that the dragon couldn't understand. One thing he hated about what he did was having to cast his lot in with foreigners. It grated on his American nerves. Even in the land of the free he had to deal with these substandard types. Brennan's blond bodyguard cast a subtle glance at his partner, who was tensing gradually to go into action. All they required was the command from their leader. For the first time in the meeting, the dragon turned his face down to Brennan. "I gave you a shipment worth 200 million. You gave me 105. That leaves 95 unaccounted for." The Irishman spewed out another profane diatribe. The dragon ignored, waiting. After a few moments, the bluster seemed to go out of Brennan, and his shoulders slumped. His eyes looked haunted, reminding the dragon of a disobedient dog caught digging in his mistress's prize rosebed. "Beaten," Brennan asked, "what are you going to go?" "That's no concern of yours. I may head to the West Coast and oversee distribution there. I've always wanted to take in the Universal Studios tour," the dragon replied. Brennan nodded. "Then good luck to you," he replied and turned back to the boat. He didn't get far. "Brennan, there's one more thing," the dragon said. Brennan stopped and turned around, that haunted look returning to his eyes. The dragon found the man's apprehension fitting, given his present circumstances. He suspected that Brennan still considered himself somewhat in control of the situation, since he had his bodyguards and the dragon was alone. The trouble for the Irishman was, the dragon knew how to buy loyalty, and as far as he was concerned, everyone was for sale. Without warning, Brennan's men turned on him, overpowering him in a matter of moments. The clatter of Brennan's pistol and his boot knife were almost lost in the rush of the increasing wind. "What's this all then?" Brennan demanded, punctuating it with even more curses. His betrayers had him pressed face down to the pier's weather-ridden wood planks. Baffled by Brennan's obliviousness to the insult he'd committed by stealing from him, The dragon knelt down so he was sure that the Irish drug dealer could see him clearly. "Payback, Special Agent Brennan." A thin smile pursed his lips as Brennan's face whitened. "You see, I'm not as stupid as you may think. But when I found out that you are the mole in my organization, I did some investigating of my own. It seems that Sin has done an immaculate job of hiding your real identity." Brennan, one arm clawing for purchase, held his other hand out to the dragon and begged, "Don't kill me! Have mercy!" His final plea ended in desperation and lacked any type of Irish accent. Silence. Only the gale swirling around them made any sound. "No mercy," was the dragon's only response. He would have preferred the money, but he felt satisfied as he stood and turned his attention to Brennan's men. "Make sure you take him far out enough that his body's never found." By now one bodyguard was binding Brennan's arms as the other had moved back to the boat to prepare the anchor and its heavy chain. Brennan's cries of apology and curses of outrage at being betrayed echoed on the wind as the golden dragon turned and silently left the pier, confident that his instructions would be fulfilled to his satisfaction. Melinda pulled the spoon away from the open flame and returned the lighter to her pocket. Carefully, as not to spill any of the expensive contents in the silver spoon, she picked up the hypodermic. The sight of the slightly off-color liquid cascading down the shaft and pooling behind the needle sent chills up her spine. She delicately replaced the plunger into the hypo, then rested against the tree, gathering her resolve for what was to come. After a couple deep breaths, she slapped the inside of her left elbow to raise the veins, then carefully pierced her flesh with the needle's tip and injected the drug into her bloodstream. The drug burned all the way up her arm. Fire. But she'd grown accustomed to that. Melinda bit her bottom lip to distract herself from the pain in her arm. If she could get through the fire, then she was in for the trip of a lifetime. Then the fire abruptly ended, which had never happened before. Just as Melinda realized something was wrong, it hit. She slammed the back of her head against the tree, splitting her scalp wide open, caught in an uncontrollable spasm. Then her body fell over sideways and went rigid. Inside her, nerve ends fried completely. In her motor control center, gates fused shut, and in her central nervous system, meltdown. She couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, couldn't feel, couldn't move. Her body lurched 3 times. The young high school student wasn't aware when her heart stopped, and she wasn't aware when she died. Mere moments later she lay on her back, perfectly straight, blank eyes staring up at the cool blue California sky. A single tear trickled down her lifeless cheek.